This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below.
Right after it happens here, it looks like Deshaun Watson has gone down with an Achilles injury, and this is an Achilles injury that is likely. Now, again, we don't know what's going to happen behind the scenes here. We don't know what they're going to diagnose this with, but they've already come out of the broadcast, said he's not coming back into the game because of an Achilles injury. Usually when it's that fast, usually when you have to cart a guy off, usually when you see that level of emotion on the face of a player like you saw in Deshaun Watson when he was carted off, it usually means a season-ending Achilles injury. Now, what does this mean for Deshaun Watson in his timeline? It depends on what kind of tear it was to his Achilles, how severe that tear was. It looked very severe just by watching it. His whole calf kind of just shook. And also like how does he personally recover, his speed to recovery, his personal ambition to recover. That's all going to determine his recovery time. Some things in his control, some things not. We do know with an Achilles, it's usually 9 to 12 months. I mean, that's just the basic timeline there for Deshaun. And if it is an Achilles tear, then his season is over. And there's a good chance that he's not going to have a training camp at the very least for next season. So this begs the question, what does this mean for Deshaun Watson's future? For Deshaun Watson's future, it looks very cloudy. I mean, like, let's be honest here. Before this game started, his future was kind of hanging on a bit of a cloud here, right? Like, it wasn't really in the best place possible that it could have been before coming back from this injury. Now he's going to be coming back from Achilles injury. He's going to be 30 years old or over 30 now that he hits that threshold. And then you're talking about a player who has not played well and has not played more than 7 consecutive starts since 2020, and the earliest he's going to come back is 2025. We're talking about half a decade here. Odds are with this Watson injury is that this is severe enough to be the final thing that derails what was a career that was going off the track, in my opinion. Is there a chance he'd come back, play again? Yes. Do I think that chance is super likely? I don't think so. But we'll see what Deshaun can get out of this going forward. It's going to be a tough spot for him to get out of. Now, if we want to talk about what the contract implications are of this, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to try to get Jack Duffin on as soon as possible to talk about that on this channel, but I don't know what the contract implication is. I do know that if, let's say, Deshaun Watson's on injured reserve for the rest of this year and a considerable portion of next year, that does help you be able to spread some of the salary cap stuff out. The more years that you can cooperate with Watson while he's trying to come back with this and spread that money down the line, the better off you're going to be. It may have a lot of impact. It may have no impact. But what this does mean for the Cleveland Browns is that now definitively they know they have to look towards the next quarterback that they're going to have to go after, whether that's in the 2025 draft, whether that's on their roster right now with DTR, or whether that's in 2026's draft. They know that they have to move on, right? This is a quarterback who's 30, who has not played well recently. I know people are going to bring up Kirk Cousins and Aaron Rodgers, but one, Aaron Rodgers not playing great right now. And two, Aaron Rodgers had 2 MVPs before he tore his Achilles. And then the same thing could be said with Kirk Cousins, was playing very well, was in the MVP conversation before he tore his Achilles. This is just a completely different situation where a player was struggling, tore his Achilles, looked like he was already starting to physically fade off that athletic ability. And even that being the case, his athletic ability was really the only thing justifying putting him out there at times. Now he might lose that. it's a tough conversation to have, but we got to be honest about it. I don't think the Browns are going to look into this and see Deshaun Watson at over 30 years old and think to themselves, yeah, this is a guy we want to continue to play as a starting quarterback. So they're going to have relatively no choice here but to move on from the Watson era. Their hand is forced. Like, they got to move on now. It's just what it is. This is a situation that makes you tear up all of your cards and move on to the next one. Even if they still were on plan A with Watson, this kills it completely. It's over with. They're going to have to move on to the next thing. Now, what does the next thing look like? So if we're talking about the future of this team, there's two conversations that need to be had, short and long-term conversations that need to be had. Short term, the future of this team for at least the rest of this season, took an interesting turn, at least during this game for the Cleveland Browns, because Jameis Winston, who had been the backup all season, who had been the guy who's supposed to be the backup quarterback, signed to be the backup quarterback, a veteran backup quarterback, was demoted to third string quarterback for this game against Cincinnati. Now, they talked to Kevin Stefanski during halftime and asked him about this. And he said, yeah, we thought that was the right choice for this game. And I'm sure we'll get something that echoes that on the post-game press conference or something similar to that effect, because I'm recording this right now during the game. So that is something that you got to think about here. If they're going to go back to Jameis next week, if they're going to stick with DTR, we'll see. But DTR is the guy that they're developing. If they feel like it's right for him to play, if they feel like he's at the right place to play, then I do think they'll continue to play him, to give him a look to see what they think of him. If they want to give him an extended look in 2025, given that Watson could come back during that season, versus drafting a rookie in this draft class, which is not the strongest draft class in the world, but I do think there's some quarterbacks worth looking at the very least in this draft class. Yeah, so that's the question about like figuring out what you want to do long-term, short-term when it comes to the quarterback position. The truth is the Browns are going to have to look forward at the quarterback position, right? Whether they play Jameis Winston, whether they play DTR for the rest of the season. When it comes to 2025, when it comes to 2026, if it wasn't obvious already that they needed to look at their options for those two draft classes, it becomes exceedingly obvious right now. Now, a lot of this will depend on what DTR looks like for the rest of the season or what other guys look like for the rest of the season. This is something that the Browns really did need to evaluate, but that's where they are there. Now, there's another element to this conversation that needs to be talked about that's not about the on-the-field stuff. It's more about the reaction in the stadium to Deshaun Watson, right? When he went down initially, I think the fans booed very heavily. This was something I was afraid of happening. We talked about this after the Commanders game. The Browns were going to go on a 3-game road trip, and it might not be something that you want to do coming off that 3-game road trip with the team to 25 to play Watson, because you're opening the doors for something ugly to happen in response to his return, if there were to be like an injury or something like that, right? Especially like a catastrophic injury where we're talking about season / possibly career-ending injury. You don't want a situation where he goes down, but the fan base is so excited that he's not going to play anymore that they cheer, right? And that's certainly what happened when Deshaun Watson initially went down. He cheered, the fans cheered, the players noticed it, they did not like it. We will hear from it in the post-game presser for sure from some of these players, their displeasure of all of that. But that's what went down there when he got hurt. Now, he went on the cart. The fans did clap him off the field after he got on the cart. I don't think it was half as bad as it possibly could have been, the fan reaction to Deshaun Watson going down. But let's not kid ourselves into thinking we had a good, classy reaction into Deshaun Watson going down. Now, whether it's justified or not, because you think the person off the field is a terrible person, or you think the player was just bad, the truth is that it's just not something you do. It's not an acceptable thing to do as a fan, no matter what the circumstance, is to root for a injury or to be excited for a player having an injury. It's very ghoulish. It's very disrespectful. It's disgusting. It's never going to go over well when a fan base does it. It's not going to be seen as justified or cute by most people. It's just going to be another ugly moment, similar to when the Browns did that with Tim Couch. Now, you can justify it. We could say it was justifiable, this, that, and the third, because of how Watson has played and what Watson's been accused of. But the truth is, it's just not within the realm of sports talk. In the realm of sports, we know that's not an acceptable thing to do. That being said, the DTR just missed a giant wide open lane there. But yeah, that's really kind of the ugly part of this, right? And people are going to feel how they feel about the reaction to Watson getting injured and how the fan base reacted. And we're going to have these arguments within either it was justified or not for years down the road, right? Because people are very polarized on this thing. But that's going to be another talking point out of this thing. But the reality is, for the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson likely out for the year, likely out for a chunk of next year. We'll see how he does in the recovery process, but we're not going to hear from Deshaun Watson for the rest of the year. That was a very serious Achilles injury, more than likely. Now the question is, okay, how do the Browns respond to this? How do they respond to this from a play calling standpoint? How do they respond to this from a play structure standpoint? This does give you a chance, now that you're going to see this offense under two different quarterbacks, to be able to evaluate, like, hey, what's actually going wrong here now that we're going to see it be repeated with another quarterback here on the Browns offense. So a lot to look at, a lot to talk about, and a lot to think about, quite honestly, with Deshaun Watson going down with an Achilles injury. Now we're going to see what Jameis and DTR has. No, I don't think the Browns are going to make a move to get another big-time quarterback in here or something like that. They're not going to trade for, like, another backup. I think they're going to just run with DTR and Jameis and then sign somebody like a Tyler Huntley type or a PJ Walker type off the street to be the third emergency quarterback. But I think that's where they're going to sit. We're going to see where we're at with these two. We're going to see where the offense is with these two. Was it just the offensive line? Was it a combination of the offensive line and the offense itself causing these issues? We will get to find out going forward now, because the Browns are going to have to do this with probably three different quarterbacks, right? Because DTR is going to play today. I imagine Jameis Winston will start the week after, and there probably will be some flip-flopping between those two as we go on throughout the rest of the season. But that's it. Deshaun Watson out for the year.